This is a short video about planting and growing pumpkins.
Where do you plant the pumpkins?
Well, the question of where we plant the pumpkins is a great question. One of the main things is that pumpkins love lots and lots of sunlight. So you want to plant the pumpkins someplace where you get a lot of direct sunlight for a large portion of the day. Also, the pumpkins like to be planted where they have a lot of organic material in the soil. So, planting them in lots of good compost and things like that can also be important.
What time of year do you plant the pumpkins?
Oh, the time of year to plant the pumpkins depends a little bit on the pumpkin plant that you're growing. Pumpkins can sometimes take anywhere from 90 to 120 days to mature into a full pumpkin plant that you can harvest. So probably you figure about 3 months maybe before you're going to want them. So if you want them around the end of October, you would want to go backwards 3 months to plant them.
How do you harvest them?
Well, to harvest the pumpkins, well, first of all, you need to know when the pumpkin, where you have a pumpkin, which I think was one of the other questions you were asking me earlier. And basically, if we look over here, we see the pumpkin has, this one's shriveled up, but when they are opened up, they are absolutely gorgeous orange flowers. And at the base of some of the flowers, you see it pretty much looks just like the stem. But at the base of some of the other flowers, there's a little ball, it looks like, which is the female flowers. If this was one here, where there's a ball, and that's what's going to grow into the pumpkin, assuming that it gets that the flower gets fertilized.
How does it get fertilized?
Oh, well, the flower gets fertilized by bugs. The bugs come around, especially bees. So bees love coming to beautiful flowers, and they go inside when it's opened up, and they get the pollen on them, and they go from one plant to the next, or one part of the plant to the next. So from male to female, and then that's the way that the pumpkin gets pollinated.
How do you know when a pumpkin is starting to grow?
Oh, well, the way you know a pumpkin is starting to grow is if you keep your eye on the female pumpkin, instead of it being just a tiny little bulb that you can feel, down underneath, underneath the flower, instead, it starts to get big and swollen and round, and basically, it's almost like a little pregnant belly for the pumpkin. Okay, so there it is, and that one is growing. This one is just about the size, a little bigger than my fist, so that's got a little while to go to mature.
How do you know when you can harvest a pumpkin?
Good question. How do I know when to harvest the pumpkin? Well, I keep an eye on it, and eventually it will start to turn colors. So instead of being all green, it will start to get orange, and at that point I'll want to make sure that I keep an eye on it. I don't want it to get overripe. I don't want the bugs to start to eat it and everything. And when it's a nice orange color through most of the pumpkin, that's when I would harvest mine.
How do you keep slugs away from it?
How do you keep slugs away? Well, that's a good question too. One of the ways that I try at least to keep slugs away from my pumpkin, one is by not letting it get overripe. Another is by I put my pumpkin up on a little something here, partly to keep it from being in contact with the soil, because if there's a lot of rain or if you're doing a lot of watering, you don't want the underside to be always wet and moist and get mushy, and the slugs start to congregate there and get in at your pumpkin. Another thing that's interesting is that aside from the original place where all of this pumpkin started, where it was planted actually way back there, and the vine came all the way around. The vine actually sends down into the ground little shoots, almost like little extra roots at some points along the way.
What are those squiggly things?
Ah, the squiggly things. the squiggly things, in addition to some of these going down underneath the, some like this going down underneath the ground as like accessory roots or something, some of these squiggly, sort of bendy, twisty, vine looking things are basically for that's the way the pumpkin grabs onto things. So if it's going along a fence, it can grab onto the fence, or it can grab onto another plant, and it can sort of get a hold and pull itself along and keep itself from being blown over or anything like that. Okay, so that is a little bit about growing pumpkins. We've grown them here. That one is still growing. There's some flowers that are still there. And this one, as you can see, we already harvested, and actually we already cut it open. And that's how we harvest and grow pumpkins. Thank you.